The Jesus we see in many churches today, if not most, is very different from what he actually looked like.
Throughout history, we've been captivated by countless depictions of Jesus, ranging from the serene image of him as a baby in the humble manger, to the majestic portrayal of him as a sovereign king in heaven. But what if there was a long-lost manuscript that promised to shatter our existing perceptions and offer an entirely new perspective on his life? Join us as we delve into the newly discovered letter of Lentulus that describes what Jesus was really like. Jesus through the ages. For centuries, especially in Western cultures, Jesus Christ has often been imagined as a bearded, fair-skinned man with long, wavy, light brown or blonde hair and frequently blue eyes. In the 20th century, one of the earliest and most renowned images of Jesus was the Divine Mercy image, which gained widespread recognition among Roman Catholics and Anglicans. This powerful depiction reportedly appeared to Saint Faustina Kowalska in Poland in 1931 during a vision. According to her diary, Jesus visited Faustina and instructed her to paint an image based on what she had seen. She then worked with artist Eugene Kazimirowski to bring this vision to life. The Divine Mercy image shows Jesus with his right hand raised in blessing and his left hand touching his chest. From his heart, two vibrant rays of light emerge, one red and one white, symbolizing the grace of divine mercy extended to the world, particularly through the sacraments of baptism and the Eucharist. Many versions of this image have since been created. However, during her vision, Jesus emphasized to Faustina that the physical painting was not the most important aspect. When she first saw the image painted according to her vision, she was disheartened by its appearance and lamented, wondering who could capture his true beauty. Jesus responded with a comforting message: "Not in the beauty of the color or the brush, but in my grace lies the greatness of this image." Another significant portrayal of Jesus is The Head of Christ by Warner Salmon. This painting shows Jesus from the shoulders up, gazing thoughtfully. Salmon claimed that he was inspired to create this image after a profound vision he had one night in January 1924 at around 2 a.m. This painting holds special meaning in the Coptic Orthodox Church. Notably, a miracle was reported when 12-year-old Isaac Yub, diagnosed with cancer, allegedly saw tears in Jesus' eyes in the painting. On the same day, Father Isaac Solomon from St. Mark's Coptic Church in Houston witnessed this miracle, and later Dr. A.T.F. Riscala confirmed that Isaac's leukemia was gone. Stephen Prothero, author of American Jesus, explains that Warner Salmon's Head of Christ revolutionized the way Americans view Jesus, turning him into a national symbol that people of all backgrounds can instantly recognize. According to Prothero, this image became the most widely known religious picture in the world, surpassing even Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper and numerous other significant religious artworks. Head of Christ has sparked both personal devotion and scholarly interest. In the 1990s, the Lilly Endowment supported a major research project to explore the influence of Salmon's art on American religion. Art historian David Morgan led the project, collecting essays and papers that were published in a book titled Icons of American Protestantism: The Art of Warner Salmon. Stephen Prothero, author of American Jesus, explains that Warner Salmon's Head of Christ revolutionized the way Americans view Jesus, turning him into a national symbol that people of all backgrounds can instantly recognize. According to Prothero, this image became the most widely known religious picture in the world, surpassing even Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper and numerous other significant religious artworks. Head of Christ has sparked both personal devotion and scholarly interest. During the study, Morgan received over 500 personal reactions to Salmon's work. Many people expressed that the image appealed to them because it seemed to show exactly what Jesus looked like. This reaction is curious because, of course, no one from the 1940s was around in the first century to have seen Jesus in person. Morgan attributes the image's authenticity and popularity to its lifelike quality, which makes it resemble a personal photograph. Clearly, early depictions of Jesus were largely inspired by people's visions, dreams, and various theories. Artists and thinkers drew from these mystical experiences and imaginative ideas to create their images of him. Descriptions from an Ancient Letter. The only physical description of Jesus we have comes from a copy of a letter written by a Roman governor named Publius Lentulus to Emperor Tiberius. Back then, writing letters was a common way for people to communicate, and we still have many of those letters today. For instance, Pontius Pilate, the governor of the area we now call Israel-Palestine, often sent letters to Caesar in Rome. Pilate even had a view of Jesus from his balcony on several occasions. We also have a fascinating letter from Gamaliel, the high priest who once taught the Apostle Paul. Remarkably, Gamaliel later became a follower of Jesus after his resurrection. This intriguing letter from Lentulus about Jesus is preserved in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. This letter was found in a monastery along with other old documents and is dated to the 12th year of Tiberius's reign. In his report, Lentulus describes Jesus as having a distinguished and lively appearance. He had slightly wavy hair, black eyebrows that arched strongly, and deep, penetrating blue eyes. His hair was an unusual shade, starting as a light color like an unripe hazelnut, smooth and close to his ears, but then changing to dark, glossy curls that fell gracefully over his shoulders. His nose was long and his beard was almost blonde but not very long. His hair was quite lengthy and had never been cut. Jesus' neck was slightly bent, giving him an expression of kindness and humility rather than bitterness or arrogance. His face was tanned, resembling the color of ripe corn, and was well balanced. It conveyed a sense of gravity and wisdom, combined with sweetness and goodness, and lacked any hint of anger. Lentulus's letter offers a vivid and detailed account of Jesus. He describes Jesus' extraordinary teachings, the miracles he performed, and the many remarkable aspects of his life. Lentulus portrays Jesus as a profoundly influential figure, revered as the prophet of truth by non-Jews and honored as the Son of God by his followers. Jesus had the remarkable ability to bring people back to life and heal various ailments. Lentulus also provides a striking physical description of Jesus. He was of average height and had a pleasing appearance that commanded both love and respect. These descriptions from Lentulus offer a rare and intriguing look at how Jesus might have appeared and the impact he had on those around him. It's fascinating to consider how different this portrayal is from the typical images of Jesus earlier portrayed. The letter not only captures his physical characteristics, but also emphasizes his profound spiritual presence and the deep impression he made on people. This glimpse into Jesus' appearance and influence encourages us to reflect on how much of what we know about him is grounded in historical truth. Ancient clues and evolving depictions. The Bible doesn't give us much detail about Jesus' physical appearance. What we know mostly comes from the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These texts tell us that Jesus was a Jewish man born in Bethlehem and grew up in Nazareth in Galilee during the 1st century. He started his ministry around the age of 30. However, the Bible doesn't provide much information about his looks, except that he wasn't particularly distinctive in appearance. When Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas Iscariot had to identify him for the soldiers, suggesting that Jesus and his disciples looked quite similar. Additionally, the Gospels, along with what remains from ancient times, offer a few clues about what Jesus might have worn. He probably dressed in a simple wool tunic that was undyed, leaving his lower legs exposed. He might have also worn a loincloth underneath and a cloak or mantle on top to keep warm. His footwear would have resembled today's sandals. Given that clothes were expensive, Jesus likely repaired his garments frequently. Without new clothes, his attire would have become increasingly worn over time. Some scholars look to Revelation chapter 1, verses 14 and 15 for hints about Jesus' appearance, suggesting he might have had darker skin and woolly hair. This passage describes Jesus' hair as white like wool or snow, his eyes as flames of fire, and his feet as like burnished bronze. Over time, artistic depictions of Jesus have evolved. Early Christian art often portrayed him as a youthful, beardless figure, reflecting purity and his role as the Good Shepherd. This image was popular in the early catacombs of Rome and in mosaics, presenting a friendly and approachable Jesus. One of the oldest known images of Jesus, dating back about 200 years after his death, was discovered in the catacombs of Santa Domitilla in Rome. This artwork shows Jesus as a young man with short hair, beardless, and carrying a lamb on his shoulders. In 2018, another ancient image of Jesus was uncovered in a ruined church in southern Israel. from the 6th century. This painting depicts Jesus with short, curly hair, which was a common style in the Eastern Byzantine Empire during that period, especially in Egypt and Syria-Palestine. Over time, such representations of Jesus evolved and eventually disappeared from Byzantine art. From the 4th century onward, artists began to depict Jesus with long hair and a beard, inspired by Greek and Roman gods like Zeus. During this time, Jesus was often shown in a long tunic, seated on a throne, as seen in the 5th century mosaic at the Church of Santa Pudenziana in Rome. Sometimes artists even added a halo around his head to emphasize his divine nature. However, it's important to remember that not all images of Jesus follow this Western style. Around the world, different cultures depict him in ways that reflect their own people, adapting his appearance to fit their local features. Ancient versus modern views. It's fascinating to see how the images and descriptions from the past continue to shape our view of historical figures like Jesus. These portrayals remind us that our understanding is often influenced by the culture and era we live in. What we see in art or read in texts may not always be a true reflection of the past. By discussing various perspectives and examining old writings, we can gain a deeper and more accurate picture of historical figures, enriching our understanding of history. Jesus likely had his hair parted down the middle, a common style among people from Nazareth. His smooth forehead suggested a calm demeanor, and his face was clear of wrinkles or blemishes, glowing with natural health. His features, including his nose and mouth, were flawless. His beard, matching the color of his hair, was neatly trimmed with a slight curl at the end. His expression was earnest, reflecting maturity, while his distinct gray eyes exuded a calm clarity. Though he was stern when correcting others, he appeared gentle and approachable when offering advice. Generally serious, he also showed a warm, cheerful side. Even though he often shed tears, he was never seen laughing. He stood tall with strong, well-shaped hands and arms. In conversations, he was reserved and modest, and embodied the prophetic description of being extraordinarily beautiful. This description closely aligns with the traditional portraits created over time, which were likely based on direct observations. The Greeks similarly detailed the appearances of significant religious figures like the Apostles and the Virgin Mary, just as they did with their legendary heroes from the tales of Troy. Interestingly, by combining the details from Lentulus's letter with the information from the Shroud of Turin, we can piece together a more complete physical image of Christ. Professor Giovanni Giudica Cordelia, an expert on the Shroud of Turin and forensic medicine, provided an in-depth analysis of the impressions left on the shroud. He portrayed Jesus as a figure of remarkable beauty and considerable height, around 6 feet tall, with a well-built and balanced physique. Despite the shroud's damage, it still shows a face that is soft and kind, with an elongated shape and a broad, straight forehead. Jesus' nose is described as straight but slightly curved downward at the tip, while his cheeks are full and slightly protruding. Detailed measurements suggest that Jesus was physically more impressive than the average person. Analysis of his facial features points to a cranial capacity of 1,575 cubic centimeters, which indicates a significant brain size, with an estimated brain weight of 1,492 grams, suggesting exceptional intelligence. Early Christian thinkers like Justin Martyr and Origen, on the other hand, looked to biblical texts to discuss his physical traits. The writings of Isaiah suggested that Jesus was not remarkable in appearance, appearing plain compared to others. However, other scriptures, such as Psalm 45, depicted him as extraordinarily handsome. This contrast suggests that people's perceptions of Jesus' appearance were influenced by their personal spiritual experiences. St. Augustine believed that the physical appearance of Jesus was less important for faith. What mattered was recognizing his humanity. He argued that while people might imagine Jesus differently, he had only one true physical form. This perspective is echoed by Cyril of Jerusalem in the 4th century, who explained that Jesus presented himself in different ways according to people's needs, as a source of joy, a gateway, a mediator, or a sacrificial lamb for sinners. Cyril emphasized that Jesus adapted to people's needs while maintaining his divine nature and sonship. Exploring the evidence. When evaluating the authenticity of Lentulus's letter, there are several compelling arguments to consider. Experts argue that the letter might be a later creation, blending biblical figures or those closely connected to them, much like other texts such as the Epistle of Barnabas or the Shepherd of Hermas. Additionally, historical records from the 15th century rarely mention Lentulus as the supposed Roman governor of Judea, which suggests that this title might have been added based on interpretations from other manuscripts. It's possible that Lentulus was simply a Roman official visiting Jerusalem or Judea at that time. Roman records do list several Lentulus who were consuls around the time of Jesus' ministry, making it possible that a consul could have written a letter to the Senate. Therefore, the authenticity of this letter deserves a thorough investigation. The letter of Lentulus offers a detailed description of Jesus that fits with biblical accounts. However, to verify its authenticity, it's crucial to find supporting evidence outside of the Bible. For example, Abgar of Edessa, one of the early Christian kings, wrote a letter to Jesus, calling him a good physician and asking for healing. Although some believe that Jesus traveled to heal him, Jesus' reply indicates otherwise, saying he would send a disciple instead. The way Jesus is described in Abgar's letter matches the healing abilities described by Lentulus. Moreover, Pontius Pilate's letters to Tiberius Caesar describe Jesus as strict, devout, and a proclaimer of truth, reinforcing the image of Jesus as a prophet of truth who speaks with authority. These historical letters support Lentulus's description and suggest that he might have had direct knowledge of Christ. Finally, we should also look at how early church art depicts Jesus. Despite the historical ban on such representations, various artworks have attempted to capture Jesus' image. Comparing the letter of Lentulus with these early artistic depictions might offer additional insights into how Jesus was perceived both historically and culturally. Significant changes took place in Christianity after the New Testament period ended. As the original apostles passed away, only a small group of dedicated Christians remained. Over time, Christianity began to evolve in ways that were quite different from the early church described in the book of Acts. Instead of trying to create a realistic portrait of Jesus, the early church used images of symbolic representations. The most common depiction was of Jesus as the Good Shepherd, holding a lamb. Historians find it challenging to confirm that these images are true of Jesus, as they often resemble pagan art that used the shepherd symbol to represent kindness. Apparently, early Christians borrowed elements from pagan art traditions. Forensic science unveils the real Jesus. While many people are familiar with Western depictions of Jesus, often shown as a white man, other cultures present him in different ways, such as Black, Arab, or Hispanic. This brings up an intriguing question. What did Jesus really look like? To tackle this mystery, forensic anthropology, a field that uses techniques similar to those used in criminal investigations, has begun to provide some answers. British scientists, working with Israeli archaeologists, have managed to create what they believe is the most accurate representation of Jesus' face. Forensic anthropology blends cultural and archaeological data with physical and biological sciences to study human populations. Experts in this field must understand genetics, human growth and development, as well as draw on knowledge from primatology, the study of primates, paleoanthropology, which looks at human evolution, and human osteology, the study of bones. Insights from nutrition, dentistry, and climate adaptation also play a crucial role in their research. Richard Neve, a pioneer in this field, recognized that forensic anthropology could help uncover what Jesus looked like. With 20 years of experience reconstructing the faces of historical figures like Philip II of Macedon and King Midas of Phrygia, Neve was well equipped for the task. Matthew's description of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane suggested he had typical Semitic features for someone from Galilee at that time. To begin, Neve and his team obtained skulls from the region near Jerusalem where Jesus lived. Israeli archaeologists had already discovered these Semitic skulls and shared them with Neve. Using computed tomography scans, Neve created detailed X-ray images of the skulls. Specialists then used computer programs to analyze the thickness of facial tissues and digitally reconstruct the muscles and skin over a Semitic skull. They verified this digital reconstruction with anthropological knowledge, creating a 3D model of Jesus' face. A mold of the skull was made, clay was applied to match the thickness of the facial tissues, and artificial skin was added. The final result included the nose, lips, and eyelids modeled according to the muscle shapes underneath. Two crucial aspects of Jesus' appearance couldn't be determined just from studying his skull, his hair, and skin color. To explore these features, Neve and his team turned to ancient drawings from the 1st century, discovered at archaeological sites that predate the Bible. These drawings hinted that Jesus had dark eyes and, in keeping with Jewish customs, wore a beard. However, the Bible provided some clues about the length of Jesus' hair. While many religious artworks portray him with long hair, most biblical scholars believe Jesus actually had short, curly hair. This view is different from the Shroud of Turin, often regarded as a genuine image of Jesus, which depicts him with long hair. Though there is debate about the shroud's authenticity, critics point to a passage in the book of 1 Corinthians, where the Apostle Paul mentions seeing Jesus and disapproves of men with long hair, calling it disgraceful. This raises a question. Would Paul have made this statement if Jesus had long hair? For Neve and his team, the answer seemed straightforward. They believe Jesus probably had short hair, consistent with the style of men during his time. Archaeological studies also suggest that the average Semitic man of Jesus' era was about 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed around 110 pounds, 50 kilograms. Given that Jesus worked as a carpenter until he was 30, it's likely he was stronger and more physically fit than the typical Western image suggests. His face was probably weathered from working outdoors, which might have made him look older than he actually was. For those accustomed to traditional portraits of Jesus from Sunday school, Neve's lab's depiction of a dark-skinned, robust Middle Eastern man offers a fresh perspective. Neve stresses that his reconstruction represents an average man from Jesus' time and region, and not everyone may agree with this portrayal. In her 2018 book, What Did Jesus Look Like?, Joni Taylor combined archaeological finds, historical texts, and ancient Egyptian art to suggest that Jesus likely had brown eyes, dark brown to black hair, and olive brown skin, reflecting the typical appearance of people from Judea and Egypt at that time. Taylor also estimates that Jesus may have been about 5 feet 4 inches tall, which was the average height for men in his era. Although many people now believe that these more recent images, with darker hair, skin, and eyes, might be more accurate, Neve emphasizes that we can never know for certain what Jesus actually looked like. What did Jewish Galileans look like 2,000 years ago? He questions. They probably didn't have blue eyes and blonde hair. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In a dim corner of the Vatican archives, historians unearthed an ancient letter sealed in dark wax. Dated around 30 AD, it was from a Roman official. The newly discovered letter of Lentulus describes how Jesus was really like. It revealed astonishing details about the man from Nazareth. Lentulus wrote, "This figure, whom many call a prophet, is nothing short of a divine enigma. His appearance defies earthly norms. His skin is a shade of gold, radiant, and almost glowing as if touched by the gods. His hair is a startling shade of white, flowing like a river of moonlight, while his eyes are an eerie, hypnotic violet, capable of piercing through one's very soul." Lentulus described unnerving miracles. He cures the blind by merely whispering, and his presence alone causes storms to abate. His voice, though gentle, resonates with a power that seems to distort reality, making it seem as though the heavens themselves bend to his will. Those who have seen him claim he can alter time with a mere glance. The letter concluded with a chilling note about the unrest his presence incites, suggesting that this man, whose powers defy natural laws, poses a profound threat to the Roman order. Famous Christian relics. Throughout history, Christian relics have held great significance for believers. These objects, linked to Jesus Christ and various saints, are highly valued because of their connection to important religious events and their perceived spiritual power. One of the most revered relics is the true cross, the cross, said to be the one on which Jesus was crucified. This relic has been a major Christian symbol since the 4th century, when Saint Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, supposedly discovered it. Fragments of the true cross were distributed across Europe, with many churches claiming to possess a piece. Although there's debate over whether all these pieces come from the same cross, they are still deeply cherished. Another significant relic is the crown of thorns, believed to have been placed on Jesus' head during his suffering before his crucifixion. The main piece of this crown was kept in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris until it was nearly destroyed in a fire in 2019. Like the true cross, there are debates about its authenticity, but it remains a powerful symbol of Jesus' suffering. One of the most intriguing relics is the Holy Lance, also known as the Spear of Destiny. According to legend, this spear was used to pierce Jesus' side during his crucifixion. Several places around the world claim to possess the authentic spear, and the stories surrounding it are a fascinating mix of reverence and myth. Another famous and quite debated relic is the Shroud of Turin. This linen cloth bears the image of a man who seems to have been crucified, leading many to believe it could be the burial shroud of Jesus. In 1988, tests suggested the shroud might be from the medieval period rather than Jesus' time, sparking significant controversy. Despite this, the shroud remains an object of deep devotion and study for many, who hope it holds a genuine connection to Jesus. The Holy Robe is another noteworthy relic, thought to be the garment Jesus wore before his crucifixion. The story goes that Saint Helena discovered it, and it has been preserved in Trier, Germany, since about the 12th century. Although its history is somewhat unclear, it continues to attract many visitors who come to see the robe. The Veil of Veronica is yet another fascinating artifact. According to legend, Veronica offered her veil to Jesus to wipe his face on his way to crucifixion, and an image of his face was miraculously left on it. Various churches claim to hold this veil, with one of the most famous pieces displayed in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. God's view of idolatry. Many people have wondered, why don't we have images of Jesus from his own time? Despite the impact of his ministry and the sacrifices made by his followers, there are no surviving physical depictions of Jesus. According to the Old Testament, God prohibited the creation of graven images, as seen in the Ten Commandments. This was to prevent idolatry and the worship of images or statues, which God wanted to avoid after freeing the Israelites from Egyptian captivity. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything in heaven, earth, or water, the commandment warns. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. This command from God was of utmost importance and had major consequences. As the Israelites stood on the brink of entering the Promised Land, God made it clear that they should not create any idols or images, whether in the shape of a person, animal, or any living creature. This was to ensure they would not become corrupt by worshiping false gods. But what does this mean for us today? It's worth noting that during Jesus' lifetime, there were no pictures or statues of him. This emphasizes that God values what's inside our hearts rather than our outward appearances. When the prophet Samuel was choosing Israel's king, he was instructed to overlook Saul, who appeared kingly but lacked a heart for God. God told Samuel, "Don't judge by his looks or height. I've rejected him." People look at the outside, but God looks at the heart. This teaches us not to judge ourselves or others based on appearance. Jesus also advised, "Don't judge by appearances, judge with right judgment." The disciples of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Peter, and John, traveled with him and wrote about his life. Yet none of their writings describe what Jesus looked like. The focus was always on his teachings and heart. When we feel ordinary or are judged for our appearance, remember that Jesus was considered average in looks and was even ridiculed. He faced contempt and suffering, without concern for his outward appearance. As Christians, we should not judge by how people look. Our value comes from God's love, not our appearance. Jesus may not fit the grand, dazzling images we might imagine. What matters is that we don't need to have a clear picture of him to understand his role as our Savior. We don't need to see his face now to recognize him when we meet him again. Every believer can trust that, at the end of our earthly journey, Jesus will welcome us into the heavenly sanctuary, and we will see him face to face in a way beyond our current understanding. Is the letter of Lentulus a genuine eyewitness account of Jesus, or merely a well-crafted fabrication designed to shape history? Let us know your opinion in the comments below.